All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome everybody to our webinar this evening. We're really excited to have Mark on tonight. I'm Allison Sandblom, and I'm our student advisor at IMU. So my role is to assist our students in selecting courses and answering any questions about IMU and assisting our students once they're first off, helping them with the enrollment process, and then once they're enrolled, assisting them with any issues or questions, technical support, that selecting their next course, and just overall helping our students have a wonderful learning experience at IMU. So I'm very excited to be a part of IMU. I think it's a wonderful venue to expand our consciousness, and we're really excited to have Mark Perkins here with us this evening. Mark is an instructor for us at IMU, and he teaches a couple of shamanism courses for us. And Mark has trained extensively in both Japanese Aikido and Hawaiian spiritual practices and shamanism, and he's a published author of the book My Journey Back to Oneness, and he currently lives in Boulder, Colorado, which is my hometown. And where he conducts healing ceremonies and seminars with individuals, families, and corporations. So welcome, Mark.
No, thank you, Allison. And I had somehow missed that Boulder was your hometown. That's cool.
Yeah, Boulder is a beautiful place.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm great to see all the names up there and see them continue growing, and we're getting more and more people on board. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to talk to you all a little bit about shamanism and talk to you about a shamanic path and help you if you're having any questions or any thoughts about whether you might be on a shamanic path or what it means to be on a shamanic path. I just want to be here to answer all your questions and help you feel comfortable and let you know a little bit about the school and some of the classes there.
And we're really excited to have you tonight. As a student advisor, I've noticed that there is a huge interest in shamanism, and I think it's wonderful that we're able to answer questions or just help clarify, what shamanism is, and what the path to shamanism, means. So we're really happy to have you here tonight.
Great, thank
And
you.
so, with that being said, I'm sure that our listeners would love to hear about how you got started on your own path to shamanism.
Right, okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting path. I started off with kind of your traditional religious upbringing. I went to church every Sunday and things like that. And about the time, it was mostly a Christian type upbringing. And about the time I was, say 13 or so, my parents decided that we weren't going to church anymore. And, of course, us boys were thrilled to death because we got to watch cartoons on Sunday morning instead of getting up and going to church. And it really took a lot of years for me to realize that they really were teaching us and helping us along on that path, just giving us the information that we needed and then allowing us to make our own choices moving forward of what we would believe in and how we would approach our spirituality. And it really gave us the insight that we needed, and myself specifically, the insight we needed to understand where we were going and to help make those choices along the path. Um, as you mentioned in the intro, Allison, I studied Japanese Aikido for many, many years and still study it, and it really helped me to understand the whole concept of oneness and about being connected with my partners in the Aikido standpoint, but being connected with the rest of the world too. And that helped me to realize that there was more in this background that I wanted to be connected with, and I more to this world that I wanted to connect to and wanted to be connected with. And it set me on the path of searching out possibilities. Now, probably the first thing I ran into was energy healing work, and that was thanks to my wife. She had a Reiki session several years back when we lived in Maryland, and she just got so much benefit out of it, and it really, really was powerful for her. And I thought to myself, wow, that's kind of interesting. I should possibly look into that. And acquisitive nature kicked in. And shortly after that, we moved to Colorado. And I was able to work with a healing teacher out here in Colorado. And it really opened me up to some of these possibilities and some of these energies. And as part of that study in energy healing, there was a lot of aspects of shamanism that were talked about and demonstrated during the session. And that really led me to investigate it from a mental standpoint of what is shamanism, how does one become a shaman, what exactly does it mean to be a shaman, and to help answer some of those questions for myself. And during that time, there was a point where you kind of feel like, wow, I'm home. That this feels natural. That those basics that my mother and father had given me years and years and years ago had led me to something that felt very home-like and very much. You could call it a calling. You could call it a path. Basically, it just felt natural. And so from that, it became less of a mental adventure and exercise to go study shamanism, and became a very spiritual benefit, and it's enhanced my life, and it's really brought me closer to God or Allah or Yahweh, whatever word you use, Great Spirit, to describe that energy, that enabling power that's out there. It's really helped me get to that level and given me some insight of what that is, that is mine, and probably only means something to me, but anybody on that shamanic path will find that type of a realization too.
Great. Yeah, I've had a similar experience with just that feeling of coming home, going, to a different healers, like a healing space, or, different teachers. You just have that. I'm sure other people have experienced it, but I know what you're talking about when you say that feeling like you're coming home. You just recognize that
Yes,
energy or
yes.
something. Yeah, that feels so good.
Right. And many people find that same feeling in an organized religion or through other practices, etc. So it's not unique. It's just something that really resonated with me and has enhanced all parts of my spiritual practice.
Right. Um, and, I know a lot of people have a question about, shamanism seems to be such a broad term. Can you help everybody with maybe a definition, or just what is your definition of shamanism?
Well, yeah, shamanism in general goes back pretty much the oldest form of spirituality known to man. It can be found in just about every society that's out there. It's different practices, different cultural modifications, etc. But the underlying concepts are all the same. That there are two areas, two components to this existence. There's the ordinary reality. It's the world of five senses and physics and up and down and kind of everything we experience as part of our everyday existence. And then there's this other side of the world, the non-ordinary reality, and those are the areas where you have spirit guides, and you have helpers, and your elementals and animal spirits, etc. And all of those areas are essentially the animated qualities and energies of nature that is out there. So with shamanism, you're going to find a very, very strong nature component. There's going to be an understanding of maybe how a wolf survives through the winter, and that's able to then help you if you were trying to live out in the wilderness to survive through the winter. But doing something simple to bring it into modern day, like watching the progression of the seasons. A lot of people talk about global warming and things like that, and I think there's some areas of our society that are missing the fact that if our planet is getting warmer, maybe we should be planning sooner. And that's that shamanic nature that comes into play. So you've got the things about ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality, and probably the primary element that really is a indicator of shamanism compared to anything else is that the shaman goes on a shamanic journey where his spirit or his soul leaves the body and travels to those non-ordinary reality areas to meet with guides, to meet with teachers, and to learn information that they can bring back then to help their community as a whole. Now, it's a little bit different nowadays. Our communities are not 10 or 15 people living in a village somewhere. They're a society of millions and millions of people. But if you think about what your day-to-day life is like, you're really interacting with a very small group of people that looks to you to provide some sort of an input or some sort of a interaction with the community to help better that community. And excuse me, that's what the shaman is doing throughout their career, is interacting with their community, going to these non-ordinary realities to help bring back information to help the community survive, to be in service to the community.
Wow. So basically, when you think of shaman, you think of an indigenous culture, but more and more there's modern shamans then, in our communities in the modern world.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been and will always be a need for a guide or for a teacher or for a leader to help guide the community. Now, some people try to guide the community through coercion or persuasion or through other methods, but when living in an area where nature is so much part of your life. I love it out here in Boulder because I can look out back and see animals running and see the woods. But when you're in an urban setting, there's a lot of nature there that can help you understand what's going on. There's the clouds, there's the breeze, there's the sun. All of those elements are letting you know what's going on in your world. And if you're inclined or you're on a shamanic path, perhaps you're the one that's out there watching for those indicators and helping your community along, helping them to understand what it is that you're seeing, so that they can take advantage of that information and can use it to in their part of the community where they're supporting it, be that as a gardener or as a caretaker, whatever the case may be. They can use what you're bringing them and your insights to continue providing their service in the community.
Mm. So then, what is a shaman? I always picture them as the medicine man or the healer of the community. So how would you define what a shaman is?
Wow, that's a big question. Um, the primary element we already talked about. We talked about the shamanic worlds and the shaman having their body or having their spirit leave their body. Those are the techniques and are the capabilities, if you will, that a shaman may possess. And many people go out and train in this capability and know how to read the weather or know how to be in touch with spirit and work with that. A shaman, though, is a little bit different. A shaman is that expert that is recognized by their community. So there are people out there that call themselves shaman and hang up a shingle and say I'm a shaman, etc. And that's good for them. More power to them. The way I was taught in what I teach others is that your community names you the shaman. They name you the expert. They look to you as as that leader, as that guide that's going to be in service to the community. So there may be many, many people in a community, a traditional community, or as far as that goes, a modern community, that are doing shamanic practices, that are working in the shamanic realms, that are bringing back information. But it's usually only one person or a small group of people that are the recognized and called shaman for that group. So for a person to be a shaman, they really are that walker between worlds. They go from the ordinary reality to the non-ordinary and come back at will. But really they're recognized by their community as that expert and as that person, that leader, to support and help the community.
Okay. So if let's say you've read some shaman books or you've learned some techniques, is it safe to be able to call yourself a shaman or advertise, yourself as a shaman, or is it really more something that is a community recognition or nomination?
It, Yeah, the way I've been taught, it's a community recognition. Now, what many people do, and the term that is quite acceptable for everyone, is a shamanic practitioner. And that's recognized that you work in the shamanic realms. You might be a healer, or you might be specialist in soul retrieval, etc. Or you might just help people get through bad times, maybe post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that. But you might not necessarily call yourself a shaman. I do not call myself a shaman. I say I'm a shamanic practitioner. There are people in my community that do call me shaman, but that's their choice. That's their moniker they put on me. One thing I do want to caution everybody on with the term shaman itself, there are some people out there that feel the term shaman should only be applied to the Tunguskic Russian peoples in the Siberia area, and they feel that the term shaman is specifically tied to those people. When we talk about shaman, when I talk about shaman in the classes that I teach about shamanism, we are using it as a term to describe the traits we just went through. So if anyone is out there that is offended by me talking about shamanic practices or using the term shaman, I do apologize. Please forgive us. We are just using the term to help us put our minds around and to provide a term to help us understand what it is we're talking about.
Oh, good, great. Thank you for the clarification because I have seen people advertise, shamanic practices, but it's pretty rare to see someone call themselves a shaman now that I think about it.
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah, especially in traditional cultures, there, even if we look to the Hawaiian culture, there's the term kahuna, which is equivalent to a shaman in the Hawaiian society. They're a kahuna for everything. You could be a kahuna for boat building, or for fishing, or for watching the weather, or for planting, making baskets. All of these things, you are the kahuna of that practice. There's only a very few kahuna terms that are actually for healing or for shamanic type activities. But these people are connected in. If you're a basket weaver, you might be connecting in with the spirit of the grasses or the material you're working with to help it mold properly to fit what it is you're trying to build. But nonetheless, even those individuals don't call themselves kahuna. They are the basket weaver, or they are the auntie that does this work. It's the people in the society that look to them as the kahuna. So this goes well beyond any type of spiritual practice, into pretty much any type of a person that's being recognized in their society as an expert. It's a recognition from the society versus someone hanging a shingle saying, I'm the best canoe maker in the world. That may or may not work, but if you are the best canoe maker, the people are going to recognize you as that, and they're going to call you that, or
Right.
call you accordingly.
Okay, great. So the webinar tonight is called Answering the Call to Shamanism and Embarking on the Shamanic Path. So what does it mean to be called by shamanism? What are some of the
Mm.
signs?
Well, we talk about some of the more traditional signs. There are many depending on which society you're looking at, there's many understandings of what it means to be called. Some societies look at it as a shamanic illness, where if you are ill for an unknown reason and are basically uncurable for a period of time, a lot of societies consider that to be the shamanic call and the shamanic illness that brings you into connection with the spirit world, and then you bring that back to your society and then are able to be that conduit into the spirit world with your society. There are other people that actually go out and train to be a shaman. In the Celtic society, the Druids would either have a family member bring the trainee to the Druid and say, we'd like this person taught, or themselves and say, I would like to study this. Now, once again, what you're learning there is the shamanic practice. You're learning the information. You may not be a shaman when it's all said and done, but there's something that's called you to that path. There's something in your head, in your body, or in a sign that you've seen to help you understand that you've shown an ability to communicate with spirits and to communicate with the spirit world. Now, it is somewhat difficult in today's society because we don't live in a society where the elders are there looking for signs or looking for the next shaman. It's a little more difficult for modern man to really recognize that call, but I would put it out there that, you know, if you find yourself drawn to the practice and you go through the effort to get your training and to learn about shamanism and to understand what it is you're doing and become good at it, if you're not immediately good already, you're answering that call. In our society today, we need to recognize by our innate ability to understand where it is we need to go and what it is we need to do. We don't have that elder in a lot of times to look at us and go, you know what, we need to take and train you. So we have to be able to recognize that ourselves, and that takes time and practice to calm yourself and to focus on what's going on and to recognize when something is not just a coincidence, but it's something you need to pay attention to. Myself, I had many instances where Hawaii and the shamanic practices in that area came up into my being for years and years, and I didn't recognize it. I didn't have that mental ability or that vocabulary to understand what it is I was getting into and to say, oh, I should do that. It was probably 25 years ago. A good friend of mine moved to Hawaii, and as soon as he got out there, he immediately called me and said, you need to come out here. It's a great place. You've got to come out here. I ignored it. Now, granted, my life at the time would not have permitted that easily, but nonetheless, I didn't recognize it at the time as a potentially part of the calling. I always like to tell people we have two ways we get our calling. We either get a subtle whisper in our ear all the way up to a 2x4 across our heads. Now, as I talked earlier, sometimes in a traditional society you get that shamanic illness. I look at that as being that occasional 2x4 across the head that says, you've got to listen to us. We are here to help you and to support you. I think in a lot of cases in our society today, we miss a lot of those soft whispers, and it sometimes takes a very large medical or physical or mental issue that starts us onto our spiritual path. And you know, shamanism is really, it's just a spiritual path. It can take many forms. As you can see in some of the images I've got running in the video, there's a lot of paths up there, and there's many paths that people could get on to arrive at a shamanic understanding, and it doesn't necessarily have to veer you off a path of your current religion, whatever that might be, or your current spiritual practices. I have found that a shamanic path can take you even further, whether you be a Christian or a Jew or Islam, whatever the case may be. A shamanic path can take you further along that path by putting you more in direct connection with the divine, with the spirit world, and actually cause your current spiritual or religious path to be far more beneficial and far more powerful. So one gets on a path many, many different ways. There's no one way up the hill. In the Foundations of Shamanism class at IMU, I give a little parable about a person looking for a path, and how she finds through the advice and through the wisdom of her father, her elder, that it's not necessarily the end spot that you're going to. You're not going to be, or you're not starting this journey to be a shaman. You're starting this journey to get on that path and to experience the shamanic realm and experience the knowledge and the information you're going to get on that shamanic realm, and then be able to bring that back to yourself, your community, your family, whatever your circle is that you're going to be supporting when you bring this information back. I mean, it's possible to be a shaman of one, that you're bringing this information back for yourself, and it's to help you along your own path. So a lot of paths, a lot of ways to get there. The path is what it's most important. There's many teachings out there to talk about this, but the path is the important part. Doing the practices, understanding what it is that's going on, and working to further understand what it is to follow a shamanic path.
Mm. Um, so, Mark, would you say that have you noticed recently that more people are being nudged or even hit by the 2x4, in the side of the head than in the past? I mean, does it seem like it's getting a little more intense in the past few years at all for you?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's funny. I talk in my classes and in some of my work about the whole 100th monkey theory that's out there. I believe it's a psychology experiment that says, one monkey can do something, two monkeys, all the way up. When you get that 100th monkey, then it expands immediately, basically, out to everyone. And I'm finding that, although misunderstood and not clearly focused, the whole concept of the 2012 and the Mayan calendar, quote, ending, and all of the theories and the understandings that are going along with that, as I mentioned, it's not the true teaching. There are many teachers out there that really explain this, but the crux of the true teaching is that it's a time of transformation. Simply because of all of the press and all of the books and all of the hype and fear that's being pushed out there through the media, through discussions, etc., about 2012 has caused a lot of people to listen a little closer to that whisper. Fear is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It makes you incredibly acute. If you hear soldiers talk about being in war, when fear hits, everything slows down. It becomes very clear what's going on. You can see what's happening. Where most people expect it to be chaotic and very distracting, a lot of soldiers talk about it being very clear. And the fear that's been brought around because of some of the discussions of 2012 has caused people to think and to become very clear about what their spiritual path is. So, roundabout answer to answer your question, yes, there is a great number of people that are out there looking for their path, be that shamanism or anything else. They are looking for that path, and they're trying to identify that path because their fear mechanism is kicked in. Now, that brings in all of its own concerns of how exactly we take a person from a state of fear to a state of positive receivership, where they can look at what's going on in the world and figure out how it's affecting them, and then be able to act on that without being in a state of fear all the time. That takes a little bit. But if fear is causing people to hear that whisper instead of the 2x4, I'm all for it. I can teach people how to get out of the fear, but I can't teach them how to hear that whisper. My wife told me when I first started in the shamanic practice that I had one problem I was going to have to work on. That because of my training as a Marine, because of my work that I had done throughout my life, I like to show people a path or a doorway, and if they didn't walk through on their own and I knew it was for their greatest good, I had a tendency to pick them up and throw them through the door. And my wife said, you sometimes throw them through the door without actually opening, and you need to stop doing that. So throughout my practice, I've learned that if people are recognizing the whisper, I don't need to throw them through the door. So it's really good, and I can feel better about my life. But you need to be there. You know, I can't show you. All I can do is show you the door. All I can do is offer you the information. It's up to you to step through it and to make your own decisions at that point in time. It becomes very frustrating, and I would caution anyone thinking about a shamanic path that takes them beyond their own personal usage, that there are going to be times when you're going to bring back information that you know can help someone, you know it can serve them, you know if they follow what you are bringing to them, that they will get better, they will be able to deal with the situation that they're in. There are people that will not listen, and they will continue down a path, and you need to keep it in your mind that that is their path, and it's their learning that's going to take place, and there's nothing you can do about it. As a matter of fact, if you try to do something about it, you're robbing them of that ability to learn that lesson that's there for them, and essentially disempowering them and taking their power away that they would receive by learning that lesson on their own.
Yeah, I think that's a tough lesson for healers to to just cut the cord and let that person walk their journey, whichever, even if it's not,
Yeah.
necessarily in their, I mean, it is in their best and highest good, but a tool that can help them, but it's their choice, their free will, right?
It really is. It's going to be their choice, and it becomes very frustrating, but you learn to recognize it and give them that ability to find their own path.
Right. Now you talked about, in the figurative sense of throwing people through the door. Can you describe, like, how does a shaman work? What kind of tools do you use, or what kind of tools do shamans, or methods or techniques do shamans use?
Well, I find that the best way to describe a shamanic practice or shamanic activity is to actually sit through one. So with everybody's permission, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes and show you and explain to you what I did as we were starting this session. I was seeing everyone's name come up on the list, and looking at their nationality and where they're from and things like that. And for each person that showed up on the list, the first thing I did was put a little prayer out there that said, if I have offended you in thoughts, words, deeds, or actions from the beginning of time to the present, I humbly, humbly ask your forgiveness, as I would forgive you for any wrongs that I believe you've done to me. And I release the negativity that might be out there, that might be something I haven't known that I've done. In some cases, knowing some of the people on this list, I've had interactions with them through the years, and we've probably offended each other at one point or another. And the first thing I want to do is release that negativity and release those connections that are no longer serving us, so that we can then move forward from a clean slate. Now, this is a technique called Ho'oponopono, and it's a Hawaiian forgiveness technique that's been around for eons throughout the Hawaiian society. A very shamanic technique where we can release the negativity and allow the society to move forward. So by doing this simple little exercise at the beginning of our session, and anybody new that shows up as our session has gone on, I do the same thing with just a quick mental note to do that. That allows us and allows all the people online to receive this information cleanly without some preconceived notions of, well, this person made me mad at one point, they can't possibly know what they're talking about, or this person made me, myself, mad, and I know they're going to be angry by what I'm saying because it's not what they believe. It removes all that, and we can have a clean conversation. This is done in a formal sense through a very shamanic process where we call in the spirits of everybody involved, and is done with a situation. Say, a person has an argument or a person has had an accident. You think about, I hit you with my car. And most people would think, well, that was an interaction between you and I. The problem is there's a lot more people that were involved in that situation. There are police, there's first responders, there's doctors, there's insurance people, there might be lawyers and judges, all the family members that were associated with that situation. All of them are tied. All of those individuals are tied to this situation. And unless we all release all of those connections that tie us to this situation, that situation can come back to hurt us. And I give an example to people when I do sessions with them. I say, you've probably had an aunt or a grandmother or something that you were at their house one time and you broke your arm or you got hurt or you got sick. Just something happened when you were there. Every time you saw that aunt throughout your life, they said, oh, I remember when you broke your arm. And every time they say that, they bring that memory back into your consciousness. The same thing happens with the negative situation, that every time someone says, oh my gosh, you know, that guy really did you over when you got your divorce, every time they say that, they bring that negativity back into your life, back into your consciousness. Through this Ho'oponopono, the theory is the only way you can truly heal these situations is to release, have everybody release all the connections. We're not talking about forgetting. We're talking about learning and forgiving the situation and being able to move on from the situation. That's one of my favorite shamanic practices. I find it incredibly effective, especially in today's society with all of the interactions we have going on, the prevalence of divorce, as I mentioned, post-traumatic stress in our soldiers. They really need things like Ho'oponopono to help them get through their life.
Yeah, and you teach a class at IMU on Ho'oponopono.
I do. It's one of the advanced classes, and Allison, I think you actually attended it,
I
so
have.
maybe
It's
you can
fantastic.
give a little independent
I
view of the
can.
class.
I
But
can.
yeah, we actually teach you about Ho'oponopono, and it is an advanced class, so you do need to have some basic shamanic understanding, because what the class is really about is a shamanic review of Ho'oponopono and showing an independent view via shamanic practices of the effectiveness of Ho'oponopono. So it is an advanced class, but it's one for people on a shamanic path. After you get through the foundations class and Sandra Ingerman's basic shamanic journeying class, then you're ready to move into something like the Ho'oponopono class.
Great. Yeah, that it is a wonderful tool. And that, I'm looking at some of these pictures going by and seeing, I always associate the drum or rattles with shamans. Do you use that, or what,
Yeah.
what do shamans use those for?
Right. Well, the drum, the rattle, and there's several other areas we can talk about just in a second, are really there to set up a beat that is commonly associated with the ability to shamanize, the ability to go out to the other worlds and connect with spirit. That's a very scientific way to say the drum acts like a carrier wave, acts like a rainbow that can carry you along to the spirit world. Now, the drums, the rattles all have the percussive nature to help you get there. There's also things like psychedelics. There's ayahuasca, which if anybody saw, there's a pot of green leaves and bark looking like in these images. That's an ayahuasca pot down in the Amazon being boiled up, ready to get. Basically, it's a psychotropic drug that allows your mind to expand and helps you connect with the spirit world. There's other ways. Some people fast before going on a shamanic journey. Other people do things like dance. You saw perhaps in the images of the whirling dervishes. I've never actually done it, but the way they described it is a very shamanic trance that it puts someone into by doing these dervish spins. Some people do what's called holotropic breath work, which is breathing in a certain manner that essentially activates that shamanic connection to allow you to reach the shamanic realm. So each of those tools that you might see the shaman have are their way, that person's way, an individual way to actually access the spirit world. You'll see some shamans that don't need that whatsoever. They can just stop, relax, close their eyes, and boom, they're there, and they can bring this information back. I had a wonderful teacher that used to look like he would listening to someone, and he would be sitting there very calmly, and he would lean over to his left and lean over to his right, and then he'd look up and say, well, the ancestors say this. And he was able to access the shamanic realms simply by leaning one way or another and listening closely. So when you talk about the drum, when you talk about the rattle, the drugs, anything else that someone might use to reach a shamanic state, they're really just, once you get to that state, those tools are no longer necessary, but sometimes are a lot of fun. Drumming is incredibly beneficial to the human body, to the human spirit. So a lot of times I will drum simply to allow the other person to relax and be ready to start receiving the information.
Mm-hmm. So, this is so interesting. I find the shamanism and the shamanic practices fascinating. And how would one go about learning these different types, or these techniques, or these different shamanic practices?
Well, there's several options, including just reading and understanding what it is to do a shamanic practice. A lot of people learn very, very well by hearing what others have experienced, because it helps you then put a vocabulary around what you might be experiencing yourself. So I think we may be putting it up later, or it's available now. I did put together a list of resources of reading material that if you believe you're on a shamanic path, or you're on a shamanic path, these would be resources that would help you further your background knowledge to help you get better and better at following your shamanic path and doing your shamanic practices. Of course, there's the IMU classes, the Foundations of Shamanism. I saw a question go by of, would we be learning these techniques in the foundation class? You would be learning about these techniques. You wouldn't necessarily be learning how to journey or how to access the spirit world, but you'd be getting that foundation vocabulary that would allow you then to work with the teacher of your choosing to learn how to actually do a shamanic journey and to go out and to visit the spirit world and to get power animals or to help an individual. You can do that via IMU. It's Sandra Ingham's class. I would highly suggest that. My first teacher was Sandra, so trust me, she knows what she's doing, and she's fantastic. So I would definitely recommend that. But that may not be an option for everybody. Some people learn better in a face-to-face type scenario, and there are many teachers out there that are teaching people how to do a shamanic journey and how to enter the shamanic realms. Again, I think it's very important before you go to a class like that, weekend seminar or a large gathering, whatever the case may be, that you first have that background vocabulary that can help you understand what it is that's going on. Things like grounding and building up your energy and ensuring that your energy is at the highest level that it can be to help protect you, maybe not necessarily from negative spirits, but from the negativity of other people in your surroundings. Unless you're working one-on-one with the shaman learning these traits, you're going to be there with other people, and you need to ensure that what you're getting is coming through from spirit, not necessarily from the person sitting beside you, because you are opening yourself up. So, in the IMU class, the Foundations of Shamanism, I talk about what grounding is and what raising your energy is, and how this vocabulary then that is included in the class can help you understand and do or have a more powerful experience when you actually start doing shamanic journey work.
So the Foundations of Shamanism course would be a really good place to start to just get the perspective of shamanism and how basically a really good start, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to, I talk to people about giving you a common vocabulary. It gives you a vocabulary, so when someone talks about soul retrieval, you've got a concept of what it is they're talking about. Or someone talks about ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality, which we just discussed. You understand what they're talking about and can help you wrap your mind around what it is that you're doing in the class. Um, Without that, I talk to people about it. It's like going into a dark room, pulling a book off the shelf, opening up, and having a light come down that just highlights one sentence. Read it, and then be expected to know what the book is, what it's about, where it came from. If you get lucky, it says, "Call me Ishmael," and you can go, "Oh, okay, it's Moby Dick, no big deal. I remember that." But most of the time, you're going to read a sentence and go, "I have no idea what it is I'm reading." So without that baseline vocabulary, without the common understanding that you would get through the foundations class, a lot of the shamanic work would be like opening up the book and reading one line and trying to figure out what it is they were talking about.
Great, good. And of course, it is a required course for a degree in shamanism at IMU. So
Correct.
it's a good place to start. Well, let's go ahead and take some questions. So, if anybody, any of our listeners would like to submit any questions, if you haven't done so already, you can use the chat feature on the left-hand side of your screen. And feel free to submit any questions, anything that we've talked about that you'd like Mark to expand upon, or anything personally that you'd as far as the path or shamanism. Feel free to submit that, and Mark is here to answer any questions that you might have about that. So take advantage of his expertise and feel free to send in some questions. And I think you did answer that one on the class. And
I did.
good. And I know that some people have concerns about shamanism, that it can be dangerous, or that you can get into darker energy, or that people might think you're a witch, or that it's can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that can be a very tricky subject. Even though the witch hunts, etc., happened so many hundreds of years ago, there's still a lot of people that see that as the way it is. And um, shamanism, I have found, really is probably one of the purest forms to connect and allow you to have a stronger connection, whatever your practice is. So when you look back at some of the witch hunts and things like that, they were really they did not have a vocabulary to understand what it is the people were doing, be that an herbalist or a person that's a midwife. The the culture at the time couldn't understand what it was they were doing. They didn't have a vocabulary, and when they didn't have a vocabulary, they had to fall back to whatever their teachings were at the time to help them understand it. So there was a cultural aspect that said, this is bad and this is evil because we don't understand it. Usually that because we don't understand it part was left off, but nonetheless, this was bad and this was evil. So the stigma gets applied to that. The shamanic practices, in my viewpoint, are the purest way to get in connection with the divine, with God, with, once again, whatever word you use to describe the supreme being or that supreme energy or the universe. Once again, whatever you use to describe it, it is a pure way to make that connection. And because it's a pure way to make that connection, many times when I explain it like that, it becomes okay to people. They can remove that stigma that they might have that this is witchcraft or this is black magic or whatever, and see that what you are doing is connecting with the divine. Now, some people worry about negative energies that are out there. I have found that a lot of times um, there is the whole idea that the negative energy you run into is in yourself, and it is part of you that you carry, a fear, a misinterpretation, a lack of understanding that you don't see. And so that fear is manifested in an energetic image that you see. Now, that is the way I, in most cases, see negativity, see dark energy within a shamanic realm. That does not say that the dark energy and there's not energies out there that you need to be worried about. One of the things I tell my students is about raising their energy levels and bringing their energy up to the highest level that they can so that those dark energies are effectively neutralized and the light is shown on those energies and they don't manifest themselves. Yes, there are areas that are dangerous, but in most cases those areas that are dangerous within shamanism are because of your own fears or because of the fears of the client that you're working with. And once you can recognize that, it becomes much easier to deal with that, not as a negative attacking energy, but you can see it through the eyes of the person that this is a fear that needs to be worked with, and you can help them clear that and to bring that into an understanding that will allow them to heal.
That's a really great point. I actually walked that path myself, personally. So I went,
Oh,
very sensitive to energy, and used to have a lot of fear about, negative energies, and through just a variety of different experiences over the years, just had finally shifted into a place of acceptance, and even compassion and understanding, and so what you're saying just really makes a lot of sense and resonates with me. Very
great.
interesting. Yeah.
Well,
So
I noticed John's got a question there. I wanted to try to address. He talks about taking the course, and he does mention having had the 2x4 on him. So I know that feeling, and I want to try to help him on this as quick as possible. John, there's a lot of people out there, as I mentioned, teaching shamanism, and it is very good to get with a teacher that you trust and with a person that has a similar mind that to you have. Now, again, one way you can do that is by getting that common vocabulary. We talked about taking the course. In the reading materials that I offer you, I talk about a book called the Encyclopedia of Shamanism that really would give you that high-level understanding of all of these areas. Now, granted, it's an encyclopedia that's 2 volumes thick, but nonetheless, you could go through that and help you understand some of these areas. Yes, Christine Pratt, we just put it up there. That type of information is going to give you that vocabulary that you need to help you understand if the teacher you are going to work with or the group you're going to work with is going to resonate with you. Probably the best advice I can give you, if it doesn't feel right, leave. Get out of the area. I myself have done that. I have walked out of drumming circles. I have walked out of seminars. I have walked out of personal one-on-one sessions because I said, this isn't right for me. It doesn't fit. That takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of comfort in yourself to be able to stand up and go, this isn't for me. You may do that a couple of times before you find the teacher that really resonates. Again, I would recommend getting that base knowledge before you move forward. Specific individuals, Sandra Ingerman and Hank Wesselman, I can highly recommend. Anyone working out of Harner's shamanism group has been vetted to a level that I would be comfortable working with them, and you can find those resources online. As far as overseas goes, I'm not as familiar with some of the people that are out there. And John, I was just looking to find your name to see where you are. And you're in Canada. I actually know a lady in Canada that does some fantastic work. I don't have her information right in front of me, but her name is Val Coyote Kraftchick. And if you write to myself or Allison, I can get you her specific information. Canada's a big place. I'm not sure if she would be near you, but I do believe a lot of the Foundation of Shamanic Studies people work out of Canada, and I think you'd be able to find. I believe you'd be able to find what you need with that. Hopefully that answers your question, John.
Great. And do you want to address the next one there?
Yeah, Deborah asks about, does it matter if you're a Native American? I'll tell you a story that hopefully will allow you to do that, because frankly, a lot of that is going to be your own personal viewpoint or the viewpoint of the teacher. Um, in the Hawaiian teachings, you come forward with three parts. You have your lower self, which is really your physical body, all of your DNA, all of the actual matter that makes up you. You have your mental body, which is the part that's new in each carnation. And that's your mental self. That's the thinking part that analyzes and takes all this information and tries to make sense of it. And then you have your spiritual body, and that spiritual body is a little piece of your oversoul, or a little piece of God that comes down and incarnates you and makes you who you are. It's your soul, if you will. Now, the soul part comes with all of the knowledge of all the incarnations that soul has ever had. Now, that soul might have been Native American, it might have been Hawaiian, it might have been in Africa, it could have been in South America, it could have been anywhere. And because of that, you cannot truly say, I am Native American, or I am Hawaiian, or I am Egyptian, or whatever the case may be, because that oversoul, 1/3 of you, your soul, may have been that at one point or another. So you need to evaluate, does the teacher look at you as a soul, as a spiritual being that could have easily been a Native American in the past, or are they strictly looking at your lower self DNA? And, my heritage goes back Scottish, Irish, Italian, on back through there. Native American, yes, there is some, but it's not a prevalent thing. So would I walk to a Native American teacher and say, you must teach me? No, probably not, but I would ask permission, because the worst they can say is no. So do you need to be a Native American by birth to study shamanism? No, because you're more than just your physical lineage, your spiritual lineage also, and you may be just as much Native American as the person who grew up in the reservation that's 100% blood Sioux.
Great. I guess we'll go ahead and if there's any last questions or anything, I think we've answered everybody's questions so far. So just a little bit more about the Foundations of Shamanism course. We are beginning a group online course that's starting Monday. So this is a great opportunity to study online with Mark, and some of the things that we're offering to everybody that's attending the webinar is, first, we're going to Mark is going to give away a free digital version of his book. So usually, you order that on Amazon, and then you wait for that to get shipped to you. So everybody who registers for his course is going to receive a free digital version of the book. So you'll be able to save some money and actually get access to that right away. And then one really exciting thing that Mark is offering tonight is he's going to be offering a free half-hour one-on-one session to the first 5 students who register for his Foundations of Shamanism course. So it's a very, very limited, very special opportunity to work with Mark, who's, a world-renowned expert on shamanism. So you'll actually get to have a one-on-one 30-minute session with Mark, and we're giving that away to the first 5 students who register. So if that's exciting and that's of interest to you, be sure to register soon, because I know those will go quickly. And then we're also going to be offering $50 off to anyone who registers for the Foundations of Shamanism class with Mark by Monday. So if you're interested in that, you can register for the course. There's actually a link. If you look at the top of the webinar page, you'll see the words International Metaphysical University. And if you mouse over that and click on that, that actually takes you to the landing page to register for Mark's course. And then, of course, you can go online to intermetu.com and just click under faculty and go to shamanism, and you'll see Mark's name there, and you can register through his course that way as well. So we're so excited to have Mark be part of IMU and have his 2 classes with us. And thank you so much, Mark, for joining us this evening and for all of the very interesting and fascinating information that you shared with us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. And I think it's also, we're going to have this recorded, so in case someone wants to listen to it again or have a friend listen to it, I believe it's going to be available on the IMU site. Is that correct?
We will, yep. So we'll have it available for replay if you want to revisit any of the information or refer it to a friend. Absolutely. So everyone
Great.
have a great evening, and thank you again, Mark. The information was just fascinating, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Great, my pleasure, and thank you all, and good luck on your paths.
Good night.
Good night.